I know. I'm horribly late. I mean, come on. Were you expecting anything different? Alright, let's talk about my favorite movies from 2018. Now, I know what you're thinking. What, are we gonna start from your least favorite to your most favorite movies? No. What do you think this is, Watch Mojo? I'm not gonna be that predictable. What next, am I gonna do some easy cop-out joke like, D's nuts? No. We're gonna do something a little bit different. Instead of talking about the movies that I least like to most like, we're going to talk about movies from a certain spectrum. Let's start with the movies that surprised me the most, and then go all the way to the ones that I knew I was going to enjoy from the very beginning. So, from surprise to full enjoyment. Now keep in mind, these could be completely random numbers, and they could have different meanings in wherever they're put. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. This is an opinion after all, and why else would you be here on a top 10 list of my favorite films? That's why you clicked on the video. So with that said, here are my favorite films from 2018. And if I missed any, just keep in mind, I'm one guy and I had to pick and choose. I'm sorry. This was the one movie that caught me completely off guard. I honestly went into this movie with very little expectation, and it actually blew me away. The film was directed by Bradley Cooper and starred him alongside Lady Gaga. Now, I gotta be completely honest with you here. At first, I had no intention of seeing this movie. This is a movie that starred a music-based artist as one of the lead roles, and if movies like Pink Panther have taught me anything, it's that it's a reactionary red flag. However, Jolene really wanted to see the movie, and for me, the general rule of thumb is, if she's interested, I think I can give it a chance. So I researched the movie a bit, figure out the movie's history, what it went through in production, but not enough to give the plot away or anything, when I discovered something that made me really nervous. This isn't the first time this movie's been made. In fact, counting this version, A Star is Born has been made 4 times. This is the 4th version of the movie to be made. If that wasn't a red flag, I don't know what was. Now, for future reference sake, I will say that yes, after seeing this version, I have seen the other 3 movies. So really quickly, let's run down those. A Star is Born 1937. Even though this is the first iteration of the movie, this one's probably one of the most boring of the set. It's made during the time where people who are writing movies for Hollywood were clearly narcissistic towards their own industry and kind of worked that into their own movie, and this really isn't an exception to that. Star is Born 1954. This one's the exact same plot, but this time it's more of a musical this time, and I actually did enjoy this one. It's fun, it's entertaining, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and come on, it's Judy Garland. How can you not like Judy Garland? Star is Born 1976. This is the worst iteration of all 4 of these. It now takes place in the Woodstock era and is purely the music industry, but this one is obnoxiously acted and directed. I honestly think this was just a ploy to inflate Barbra Streisand's ego. I understand why older generations hate Madonna, Anthony! But I still don't get how more people didn't like Streisand. Which brings us to the 2018 version, which I didn't honestly think I'd ever say this about a remake, but this might be the best version of A Star is Born. Even though this is on the surprising end of the spectrum, which might have implied that this is my least favorite movie of the year, don't make a mistake here. This hands down is way up there as one of my favorite films this year. Bradley Cooper is a wonderful actor, and I honestly did not expect him to be as good a director on his debut. God damn, he did it. The movie's well acted, directed, shot, composed, it's pretty great. I was kind of apprehensive about Lady Gaga at first. I mean, she's a pretty good artist, she's well trained, but I hadn't seen her act. That was my main concern. Of course, apparently she's in American Horror Story, but I don't really care about TV shows. So holy hell did her performance surprise me. She knows how to convey emotion and thought on screen exceptionally well. She and Cooper had amazing chemistry together, making the movie much more engaging. It has come to my attention since the movie came out that Lady Gaga grew up in an Italian upbringing, something that I was completely unaware of during the movie. When she's agitated or excited sometimes, as seen in interviews, a bit of an accent pops out there. So, how do you work around that? Well, how about by putting her character in an Italian-centered household that subtly but effectively explains why she has that tendency in the first place, not by making it obvious, but by turning that actor quirk into a defining character trait. Yes! I love it when movies put an effort into small things! And keep in mind, that's just one small thing amongst a vast number of wonderful things in this movie. I refuse to spoil any bit of this movie for here. Do yourself a favor, go see it yourself. It's one of the best movies this year, and I honestly can't wait to see what Bradley Cooper does next. If you've been paying attention to my Twitter over the last couple of weeks, all one of you, at Dogmatic, you'll know that I've been recently playing the PS4 Spider-Man game by Insomniac. This game is a powerhouse and I love every second of it. Except when Spidey decides to run around the corner of a building when you want to jump off it and you gotta wait for him to finish his animation to actually jump on it, and it takes too long! This game is phenomenal and I love it. It comes from a passion that I've had for Spider-Man for, well, a very long time. I've been a fan of Spider-Man my entire life. I played the PS1 Spider-Man game when I was 1. I watched that animated Spider-Man show. I was giddy with excitement at 4 years old when the Sam Raimi Spider-Man came out, and I still love all 3 of them to this day. Yes, all 3 of them, even the third one. I refuse to hate the third one! So, imagine my disappointment when the Amazing Spider-Man movies came out. I know it's fun to hate the second one, but I adamantly have a dislike for both of these movies. They don't feel like Spider-Man movies. They feel like Sony ads that happen to have Spider-Man in it. Homecoming was alright, it was a decent movie, and I felt like it was a nice return for Spider-Man. But it was missing something. I don't know what it was, but the inner child in me was yearning for that special something that made Spider-Man unique. The PlayStation 4 Spider-Man started to remind me why. There's just something about Spider-Man that's just so relatable, you know? I can relate to Spider-Man, to Peter Parker, to everything he's going through. That sense of responsibility.
Comedy gold, really? I'm telling you, it's comedy gold.
But even though I was playing this on ball-crushingly hard difficulties, I mean, mainly because I hate myself, it was still missing a sense of thrill. And I didn't know why that was, and I didn't know when it would come back to Spider-Man. Enter Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. Oh my gosh, this movie is a trip. It's a good animated movie, it's a good movie in general, hell, it's a great Spider-Man movie. But you're probably asking yourself, why is this on the surprising spectrum? 'Cause, my lovelies, this is from that same studio that is responsible for the one movie that kick-started my entire show's existence. By far one of the most horrible movies I have ever seen in my entire life, you unoriginal. I'm genuinely convinced that someone from Sony Pictures Animation watched my pathetic little speech about animated movies because me sideways, they actually tried this time, and it works. I have not had this much fun with a Spider-Man movie since, well, Spider-Man 3, when I was 9. It's been 12 years, but Into the Spider-Verse manages to captivate me just like the old Raimi films did when I was younger. And honestly, those older ones still do. This movie is so good you'll forget Venom came out in the same year. Oh, but don't you worry, I didn't forget. I never forget. As an animated film, this movie's top-notch. Every little detail is carefully handcrafted and just looks so good. Look at that. It looks great. I really enjoy the character designs for this iteration too. I think this is the first time I've actually seen the Kingpin drawn this uniquely, maybe even the first time he's had depth as a character to begin with. I honestly think this movie would work perfectly fine if you knew nothing about Spider-Man, but this is an absolute love letter to everything that is Spider-Man. Miles Morales is the main character, Spider-Gwen, Penny Parker, Noir Spider-Man, the inclusion of a titular Spider-Ham. This movie's also surprisingly well cast. I was initially apprehensive about Nicolas Cage being in this, but with the noir-era detective Spider-Man that loves punching Nazis, it kinda works in their favor. I think John Mulaney was probably the one I had the least opinion about. He wasn't anything special, but he made Spider-Ham tolerable instead of annoying like I thought he would have been. But that's probably because I don't find Mulaney's brand of comedy all that funny. But the writing made every other Spidey balanced in contrast with Miles, the movie's focal point, and it made for one incredible experience. It's things like Spider-Verse and the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game that remind me so much of why I love Spider-Man and will continue to love Spider-Man. Anyway, while we're on the subject of Marvel, I think we can all safely say that the Infinity arc from the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going on for quite some time. Over 10 years now, actually. And while I'm sure Marvel's got some interesting plans in the future, I think after this Infinity arc is over, I think I'm getting off the ride. Not to say that these movies are bad, but man, there's just so much to keep up on, and I think I'll let someone else take care of the superhero movies. But as for right now, I got to see Infinity War this year, and unlike other movies this year that were based around superheroes like Black Panther, which I won't get too much into because A, Black Panther will have its time, and B, I'm still salty about that Best Picture thing, and I refuse to go into that right now because I would be repeating myself. Unlike some other superhero movies this year, this one caught me by surprise. And yes, while this did start a bunch of memes and oddities like, "This was my home," I am feeling adequately not great. Josh Brolin and Player I have to give credit where credit is due. This movie was genuinely surprising in its direction. It's not the best in the lineup, granted, but it was genuinely something that I wasn't expecting. And it has me curious as to where do you go from this? How on earth do you wrap this up with Endgame? But I will say, there's only really one way to find that out, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how Endgame turns out. I really don't have too much else to say about this movie other than the only reason movies like Black Panther or even Spider-Man Homecoming were made were so that these characters could probably appear in Infinity War without any previous mention or sudden exposition dump at the beginning of Infinity War, but that's a subject for another day. Like I said, Black Panther will have its time. But I will say this was a genuine breath of fresh air for Marvel movies, and it may have staved off my fatigue for at least a little while longer. Alright, now let's step back from the AAA market for a second, and let's go more indie for a change. Like, let's go $10,000 shoestring budget level indie. Lover is not one of my favorite movies of 2018. It's not even close. But there is a reason I put it on this list. As many of you know, I'm a director, and a writer, and an actor. Hell, what am I not? On time would be one thing. Will you shut up? But like most people, I started out just being fascinated by film and stage. I spent a lot of time as a writer, I wrote a book that I deleted actually a month ago when I found it. Trust me, it made Michael Bay look like a saint. I helped write and star in an Expendables TF2 ripoff that also never came to fruition, thank God. And I've even spent some time working on a story for a game, which hasn't really gotten anywhere at this point. Even more recently, I've written a full-length comedy. I'm in the process of writing another show. I've got a comedy idea in my head that I might put out on paper, maybe a mini-series idea. I'm tossing around a full-length movie idea for my senior project, and I've got this show at the same time. I've grown through experience, but only recently have my endeavors seen the light of day. It's pretty cool, but it makes me wonder why I never did anything about it sooner. And the simple answer to that is because I never thought I was good enough for it. That my writing and directing were just never going to be good enough. That I should never try because I'll always be terrible at it. Those thoughts haunt me, off and on, a lot more recently than they used to. Part of the reason I can't sleep at night sometimes. But there's always a side of me that's just rebellious, that wants to fight back against those things. And that's part of the reason why I always find the strength to keep doing the show. And a lot of us have dealt with that in some way or form. And the best way, in my experience, is do what you want to do. Just because you love doing it, that's all that really matters. Lover is one of those movies to me. It's the directorial debut of Ralph Seffi Jr. This was a movie that he wrote the script for back when he was 18. For comparison, I'm 21 now. I turned 18 the summer after I graduated, in 2015. But now that I think about it, I think he also graduated high school in 2015, if my information serves me correctly. And he's already finding success with film. Oh God, what am I doing with my life? Lover is the story of what happens when two lovers, aren't completely honest with each other. And that's probably as much as I should give because the movie goes into enough depth with that. The movie is, well, it's a college movie. That's really all I can say. I didn't really expect anything more from that anyway. And the movie does have its fair share of issues, and the couple I'm going to point out now would probably start with the acting. In some places it's fine, in other places it's subpar. Sound mixing was kind of an issue. There are some points where I could hardly hear what was going on. Although, if that's a stylistic choice, I'm not entirely sure. Overall, this is not a bad movie, but it is not a good movie either. It's somewhere in between. It's an interesting oddity. But that's kind of the point of me putting it here. Not putting this movie here to show off its quality, but rather the potential that the director shows. I've been sticking through a lot of his stuff. He's made a lot of really good short films, from Sauce to King Candy to The High to Brothers Paradise. He gets better with every single venture, and Lover is right up there with them. Like Bradley Cooper, I cannot wait to see what he comes up with next. It's proof you don't need $1 million or a team of all-star actors or even a worthwhile resume. You just need passion. Ralph clearly demonstrates he's got plenty of it. And I honestly cannot wait to see what he comes up with next. And really, I think he should serve as an example for the rest of us. I mean, if one guy can take $10,000 and make a full-length movie at this level, just out of passion and creativity, then why can't you? And besides, just because a movie isn't perfect doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. Oh, what's that? Clever segue. Speaking of which... Oh, I love it. I love this movie. I love it so much. I have a feeling you're going to as well. I mean, unless you have absolutely no patience whatsoever, in which case you're gonna hate it, but I love it. If you have never heard of Neil Breen before, imagine Tommy Wiseau, but without the mysteriously large budget, and about the same egocentricity to boot, and you have yourself Neil Breen. I was introduced to the holy three-brain salad of films he's made thanks to Adam from Your Movie Sucks. The three films in question, of course, being Double Down, Fateful Findings, and I Am Here. Now, all three of these films are pretty entertaining on their own, and like Cooper and Seppi, I cannot wait to see what he came up with next.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
And sure enough, he would have finally announced screenings for his newest film, Twisted Pair. Oh, man. I can't wait for this to be available to own because, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably one of my favorite Neil Breen films by far. If making himself the ultimate cyber Christ in one film wasn't enough, or an omnipotent moral authority in two others, he has two main roles in this movie as twins. One morally good, and the other an anti-hero with a fake beard that reminds me of my awful facial hair assignment and stage makeup. It's pretty funny. Like Neil Breen's other works, this is definitely something you'll want to check out on your own time, and I won't spoil anything for you here because this is something that I feel is best going into completely blind. Well, at least as blind as you can be, preferably with a crowd, and a crapload of Baileys to boot. This movie was the greatest comedy of the year, unlike other movies, and I give this one a solid 10 out of 10. I am being completely genuine there, that's not a joke. This movie is even better than anything ever put out by Edgar Wright, Tarantino, Guillermo del Toro, anybody. This is the greatest film of all time. Why are you still listening to me? Go buy the movies, go watch them. Why are you missing out on this masterpiece? Are you stupid? I haven't had a decent night's sleep in days. Alright, let's get back on track here a second. I know, there's a lot of superhero movies on here, but let's face it, we've had a lot of good ones this year. This is the last one. Jolene and I loved the first Deadpool film. It was the film we saw on our first date. Aww. Yeah, I know. So basically, when the second one came out, we made another date and saw it on opening night. Aww. Yes, I get it. And hot damn, this is, well, basically more Deadpool. That's really all it is. It's just another Deadpool. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Deadpool 1 was fantastic, hilarious, definitely not a kid's movie like some morons apparently thought. So all Deadpool 2 really needed to succeed was to, well, do all that again. But I think they did a little bit more than just that. Deadpool 2 ups the ante from the last movie. Granted, it does double a lot of the fourth wall breaks, which can get a little annoying over time, but it's Deadpool, what are you gonna do? Doubles the charm, doubles the gore, surprisingly. It's a hell of a lot more Deadpool, and I can't wait for the third one. Because, let's face it, it made bank. It's gonna get a third one. But what makes me so interested about this is the fact that it's very cynical towards the type of film that it is. It knows it's a superhero movie, and it knows people are getting tired of it. So instead of trying to pull people back in by saying, oh, it's not so bad, it's basically saying, no, we know you're getting tired of this, but let's give you something interesting for once. Also, if you're wondering what I thought of the PG-13 version, I don't. I haven't seen it. I don't plan to see it. Why censor something for a younger audience when it clearly wasn't made for that audience to begin with? Anyways, on to my final pick. When it comes to stylistic presentation, one of my favorite directors of all time is Wes Anderson. You can point to any single one of his films, and you can definitively say, yeah, I'm not used to seeing that in a movie. Granted, though, it's not for everybody. Some people will like his movies, while other people will just get really bored by it. And I'm not gonna fault anyone for that. I'll just silently judge you internally far past the point where my skeleton has dissolved into matter. So color me surprised when a little movie called Isle of Dogs is announced. Now, anyone who's familiar with my channel will know that I have an obsession with dogs. Now, some people say that's an unhealthy obsession, but those people are something I like to call, really stupid. I guess if you want to shorten it, you could say that I love dogs. But that's not the only thing that got me interested in this movie. Full disclosure, I am extremely fascinated by Japanese history and culture. Seven Samurai and Yojimbo are two of my favorite films of all time. Rurouni Kenshin: Wandering Samurai is one of my favorite anime of all time. And I absolutely jumped at the chance to play Neo. Oh, what's this? Two different things that I like very much? Well, obviously, the best thing to possibly do is just slam it all together! And man, this movie does that in spades. Set 20 years in the future in the Japanese archipelago, there's a horrible dog flu being spread around, and to keep it from spreading to humans, the government comes to the resolution to relocate all of the dogs onto Trask Island. How could they come to this assertion? They're cat people. I think that's the best possible explanation for a story like this. This is a Wes Anderson movie through and through. Although I will go on record that I didn't really enjoy Fantastic Mr. Fox when it first came out, but it's also been ages since I've last seen it, so my opinion might have changed. But I will say this, Isle of Dogs is definitively a step up from Mr. Fox. It is a hyper-stylized stop-motion film with beautiful cinematography, excellent writing, wonderful editing, and a killer soundtrack to boot, which I also happen to own on vinyl. Dogs were even given movement mimicking actual dogs. They had dogs roaming around their office for study, and the first thing I have to say to that is, where can I get a job here? It is perfect. Well, scratch that. It's almost perfect. Wes Anderson's style of directing actors results in a bit of a double-edged effect. On one hand, it's an interesting presentation, but on the other hand, it causes a lot of them to speak monotone during some scenes. And while in some areas it works perfectly fine, in a couple of other places, particularly with the foreign exchange student, it can be either cheesy or awkward. And yeah, I wouldn't blame someone for being bored by this movie because of the presentation, because it can be a little grating at times. But other than that, I think this is a fantastic movie through and through. One thing to note, though, the advertising seemed to have marketed this as a family-friendly movie, and I don't really think that's the case. It's a PG-13 film, there's a dog's ear bitten off within the first 7 minutes. It can get a little graphic sometimes. I'm not saying that you need to helicopter your kids if they want to watch it, but maybe do a little bit of research before showing it to them. But hey, what do I know? I apparently watched that one Pingu episode with the walrus when I was young, and I turned out okay. Through and through, though, if you're a fan of animation, if you're a fan of film, or in my case, if you just really love dogs, then don't miss this one. And I swear to God, if this loses animated picture in the Oscars, I'm going to kill someone. And so, that concludes my list of favorite films from 2018, from the most surprising to the most anticipated. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hang on a second, director, you didn't talk about Roma. You didn't talk about If Beale Street Could Talk, Black Klansman, The Green Book. Yeah, well, I haven't gotten to see those movies yet. I'm a college student, and there are two things I'm lacking in order to see anything I want, whenever I want. And that's time and money. That and 75% of the movies I did see last year turned out to be actual garbage, which I will give a list of its own in due time. That said, though, I am hard at work on my next major review, which is definitely not coming out on Valentine's Day like I had planned, but it is coming. Eventually. But before we close out, I want to give a huge, really huge shout out to Katie Watson, a friend of mine who worked really hard on these new cutouts. She put a lot of effort into them, and there isn't anything I will be able to do in this lifetime to thank her enough. So do me a huge solid. Go to her portfolio and check out her stuff there. She's also got an Instagram. She's doing a weekly comic that actually is pretty funny at times. Go there, follow her, and like all of her stuff. She is too damn good at what she does to go unnoticed. You think I'm joking? That wasn't a request. Go check out her stuff right now. Right now, I mean it. Do it now, or I will eat your firstborn!